My story is 28 years, 201 days long, but I'm gonna condense it for you, don't worry. As she said, I did have a double lung transplant, and this is my journey. When I was 11, I was diagnosed with interstitial lung disease, and a couple years later, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, and they think the two were connected somehow. But I lived my life as best I could. I went to college. I became an EMT and a firefighter. I always knew that I wanted to be in the medical field and give back. So, 2001, I had my first major surgery, and I had my entire colon removed. A couple years later, I started on oxygen. I just needed it to sleep and things like that. Then I met this doctor who decided that maybe he needed to try a new treatment, and we were going to do bronchoscopies and do them every week. And he diagnosed me with ulcerative colitis of the lung, which is very rare. And so he told me I should never get pregnant, and that I would eventually need a lung transplant, as my disease would always get worse and never get better. So we did bronchoscopies, and we did those for 4 years every day. And then in 2009, I got worked up for a transplant. And I decided mentally I wasn't ready for that. I was only 34. I wasn't ready to say goodbye to my family if something happened. Survival rate after 5 years was only 50%. So we continued doing the bronchs for another 6 years. But in 2014, I realized my lung function was going down. It was harder to breathe. I was getting very tired. So I called my lung transplant coordinator and I said, hey, I'm ready to do this. So in June, we started the workup process, and by August the 26th, I was listed. Nothing happened in 2014, but I knew 2015 was going to be my year. God was going to pick out that perfect pair for me, and he was going to find the one that I needed. So on March 14th at 1:50 in the morning, 201 days later, I got the call. And I was not sure I wasn't dreaming, but my nurse reassured me that I wasn't, that they had found a pair of lungs for me and I needed to head to the hospital. So she told me I needed to leave within 30 minutes, and the hospital was an hour away as well. I was overwhelmed, I was anxious, I was nervous, I was everything balled up. Who do I call? Do I call them? It's only 2 in the morning. But I called my mother, and as me and my father got our stuff together, it was as we were getting in the car, my nurse calls back. Don't leave the house. There's a problem with getting to your lungs or something. Quite sure, I don't know what she said. My head, my mind were racing. I just know she told me to stay home, that this wasn't going to happen right now. She just said she would call me later, go back to sleep. That was easier said than done. So I fell back to sleep. It seemed like about 10 minutes. And at 6:45, she calls me back. And she says, it's a go again. So she says, come on in. So I called my mother again. I woke my father. We got in the car this time and actually drove. And as we drove, everything started to hit. Was I doing the right thing? Was I ready to say goodbye to my family? Had I accomplished everything I wanted in life? So we get to the hospital, it's about 8:15, and I was greeted by nurses and doctors and all the staff and my family. They were all waiting for me. And I was grateful to see their faces and be able to tell them that I loved them. And as I'm doing this, the internal tears start to flow. And I realized somewhere, someone had lost their life. And that family was grieving their loss. But I was going to be brave and strong for my family and for my donor, and I was not going to let my family see me cry at that moment. So 2 hours later, about 10:30, they wheeled me down to the OR. My family walked down with me and walked all the way down to the red line. And they took me on back to the OR, and the last thing I remember them telling me was, I'm going to give you something to relax. I was out. So then I woke up, and I vaguely remember waking up in the ICU and telling my family and my nurses, I'm going to be out of here in 2 weeks. So my family was happy. I woke up with that same positive attitude that I always had. In less than 24 hours, I was up sitting in a chair, and I had my breathing tube out. So I was doing good. Then the next week was kind of a blur. With all the pain meds and everything, I just had a bad case of delirium. And Time was nothing to me. I felt like I was in a scary dream that I could not wake up from. But what got really scary for me was when I was trying to chew one piece of food and I couldn't stay awake enough to chew that one piece, let alone take the medicines that I had to take. So they gave me Narcan, and being an EMT, I knew exactly what that drug was and what it was gonna do. And as soon as they gave it to me, I instantly woke up. But I was tense and locked up from the top of my hair to the bottom of my toenails. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak. I was terrified. But eventually it started to fade down and I could speak again, although my speech was very garbled and everything. But I was on the right track and we had to start over with the pain meds once again. But I spent 12 days in the ICU, and then I got moved up to the 7th floor to where I was more independent. I was off the oxygen. I didn't have an IV tube pole stuck with me 24/7. Instead of doing 1 lap around the ICU, I was now doing 3 laps around the 7th floor. So I felt like I was accomplishing things, and I was getting better doing my exercises. They were watching for infection, they were watching for signs of rejection. I was learning all the meds that I would have to take for the rest of my life, and I was doing pretty good. So I was admitted on Pi Day, and I got out 1 day before Good Friday, which would have been cool, but hey, I was ready to go home, I was happy. So the nurse wheeled me out, and right before we got to the front door, I said, wait a minute, I want to walk out these front doors on my own 2 feet with my new lungs. So I did that. And I felt very accomplished. I was happy. I wasn't carrying an oxygen tank with me. I was proud of myself, and I was making my donor proud. I want to inspire others to know that they're not alone in this journey. My motto this whole time has just been, just keep swimming, and it still is. I've faced little hiccups, and I'm sure I have many hiccups that will come along. In fact, I'm getting ready to walk in my first 2, I have 2 5Ks that I'm getting ready to walk, the first one being this Sunday. So just 6 months after my surgery, so I'm pretty excited. So, but I'm just keep swimming. You know, what's the alternative? To be sad, to be negative all the time? Because that's not me. Be positive, believe in yourself. It's the most powerful medicine that you can have.